Hey team, and welcome back to the channel and another episode of our magical elections forecast, where we're going to talk about our magical election opportunities that we'll have around the world from our Taurus New Moon on April 27th until our Gemini New Moon, I forgot which sign came next, on May 26th. And there's a lot going on this month, so now I feel bad for wishing that there was more happening, because now I have to cram it all into one video. And so there are about 12 elections that I have highlighted across the world. And we'll see how many of them actually make it through when I kind of go back and look at them with more critical eyes, kind of going through them today. But we're going to go ahead and dive on into it. And our first election opportunity is going to be for an Algol fixed star talisman. Algol is probably one of the more famous or infamous of the fixed stars. Generally, it's considered like the most malefic fixed star in the heavens. But in a magical practice, we use it more for preemptive protection. So Algol is a protective talisman, generally, that its unique method of protecting is focused in on sort of neutralizing threats before they arise. So it's a very helpful talisman for people who feel threatened, who feel under threat, or who just want to have sort of an extra added layer of protection to keep with them through, whatever is going on. I've seen people use it a lot for travel, to sort of like help keep them safe during travel and stuff like that. But generally, Algol is more of like a, almost like a home or altar protection talisman. Like usually it's one that's left at home. Usually it's one that's left on the altar so that it can kind of do its job, kind of all the time to keep the home and the family in the home safe. But I have seen people use it for more specific things. So this is going to be for North America only. And the Algol talisman for North America is on April 28th at around 14:13, so around like 2:15ish p.m. And here we're going to have the fixed star Algol is set to 26 degrees of Taurus and its projected ecliptical degree. And we're going to have the moon applying a conjunction to that degree while it's on the midheaven. At the same time, the moon is going to be applying a sextile to Saturn, and Algol is a star that is of the nature of Saturn and Mars. So you want the moon to attach to one of those two planets, and so the sextile with Saturn works out very well here. Meanwhile, the ruler of the first house, because Virgo is on the ascendant, is Mercury over here. And Mercury's doing okay, hanging out in Aries, not afflicted by the conjunction with Saturn. We're too far from that. Haven't come up to the square of Mars yet, not combust the sun. So Mercury's in a pretty good place right now. If only Mercury were in a sign we could actually try to get a talisman for it. Things would be great. But unfortunately we can't. But this does make all of the pieces that we need for an Algol fixed star talisman for North America. Our next election opportunity is going to be for Western Europe only, a Western Europe exclusive. And this is going to be for the 6th Lunar Mansion. And so the 6th Lunar Mansion is one that is primarily focused on relationships. The 6th Lunar Mansion helps us come together with people. And we are typically thinking more in like the romantic area of life here. So this is more of a talisman that's helpful for dating. It's more of a talisman that's helpful for, finding people who are sort of along our desired partner list kind of a thing. People who check the boxes of those kinds of qualities. Or to help strengthen a relationship that is already existing that might be struggling a little bit, or just having a hard time kind of getting up off the ground. So, definitely look into the 6th Lunar Mansion if you're at all in that field, trying to find people that you could potentially develop a more long-term relationship with, to kind of have that connection with. The 6th Lunar Mansion is going to be able to help you out in doing that. And so looking at our election, this is, like I said, for Western Europe, and this is going to be on April 30th, Western Europe and North Africa. This is going to be for April 30th at around 8:20 in the morning. And here we're going to have the moon in the, and here, hi babush, yeah, give me that, yeah. So here we're going to have the moon in the 6th mansion on the ascendant. And at this time, she's going to be applying this conjunction with Jupiter. And, I think we talk about this every time, but obviously in relationship type talismans, Venus is going to be kind of the number one choice. Jupiter, I think, makes a good second for this, just Jupiter's benefic energy, trying to bring people together and especially for trying to stabilize environments to where growth can happen or development of feelings can happen. I think that's a very powerful thing. and Jupiter performs that role well of just sort of like giving everything it needs to be able to develop and grow into something like healthy and strong. And so, super important points, especially when it comes to how, couples grow together a lot of times. So Jupiter is a really great option to have here. The Sun is another really great option. Mars, Mercury, and Saturn, I'm less inclined to trust with something like this. But that might also be something that you consider with like natal chart connections as well. So like I might not really enjoy Mercury as a planet the moon applies to for romance type talismans. But if you're somebody who has like a Mercury ruled sign on the natal descendant, then maybe Mercury isn't such a bad choice for you. But for everybody else, I try to keep it more in line with the kind of natural powers of the planets. So anyway, the moon's applying to Jupiter here, and at the same time, we've got Mercury as the ruler of the first house. I guess I'll just keep talking about him. And, well, that was an attempt at an arrow. And Mercury's up here in the 11th in Aries, unafflicted by Mars or Saturn, just kind of hanging out. The ascendant degree is also unafflicted by Mars or Saturn. The moon is unafflicted by Mars or Saturn. So all in all, a good 6 Lunar Mansion talisman to grab to be able to take advantage of. The next election opportunity that we're going to pick up is going to be for North America, Western Europe, and North Africa. Australia, unfortunately, is still going to have to sit with this one out, but I think we'll be talking about them in our next election that we're going to talk about. But this is going to be an opportunity for a 7th Lunar Mansion talisman, and the 7th Lunar Mansion is probably one of my top 5. It is a mansion that is associated with the power to like acquire all good things. So similar to the 3rd mansion in that case, but the 7th Lunar Mansion is a little bit more focused on like financial issues. That tends to be kind of the reading that people have with it, and I guess that's kind of conformed with my experiences, or like the experiences that people have shared with me. But the 7th is a really great sort of all-purpose talisman. It's a little bit more focused, as they say, on financial issues, but that doesn't mean that's all it can do. So definitely take advantage of it if you're able to be available while this election is happening. So the opportunity for the 7th Lunar Mansion talisman for North America is going to take place on April 30th at around 8:30 in the morning. And here we're going to have, it's going to look very similar to the 6th Lunar Mansion did for like Western Europe and North Africa. So kind of that same thing, the moon in the now 7th mansion on the ascendant, applying the connection with Jupiter. Jupiter, again, a very stable, helpful planet that wants to provide good things. And so having that connection for the moon to go to in this mansion is very, very important, very useful, very practically useful. And at the same time, we've got Mercury, who rules the first house, up here in the 11th in Aries, unafflicted by Saturn, unafflicted by Mars. So overall, kind of like I said, for the like, it's a good talismanic opportunity. Moon Jupiter conjunctions in mansions that are generally positive mansions are always very powerful. So anytime we're able to get one every time we're able to get a Moon Jupiter connection in a good mansion, I'm excited for it. Not as excited as I am for Sun connections, don't get me wrong, but it's nice to see them. It's nice to see that line up. So that's the opportunity for North America. Western Europe and North Africa, so this is actually the chart for their 6th Lunar Mansion talisman. You can see the moon's not in the 7th mansion yet, but just a few hours later, with the moon like on the midheaven, we can get the 7th Lunar Mansion now. So now the moon's in the 7th Lunar Mansion on the midheaven, and now she's applying the conjunction to Jupiter again. So we're seeing that, continued theme of connected to Jupiter. We just have to wait. It's always really fun when things like this happen, when we have the moon applying to an appropriate planet towards the end of one lunar mansion, because usually if you're able to get it a little bit later, you're able to get the moon to be in another lunar mansion, so you can kind of get these 2-for-1 packages, we'll say. And this is kind of an example of that. The moon on the ascendant is the 6th lunar mansion. The moon on the midheaven is a 7th lunar mansion, because she's moved far enough through the zodiac to enter the new mansion. So applying the connection with Jupiter, which we really like. Mercury still rules the ascendant, this time through the ascendant being in Virgo, just chilling out over here in Aries in the 8th. Again, we've got the trine to Mars, which is no big deal, and we're averse to the square of Saturn. The moon is, here at this point, the moon's getting a little bit closer to the square of Jupiter. So we kind of want to block out too much past this. But the square of Saturn, I'm sorry. But we do have this conjunction with Jupiter happening that helps to kind of block out and shield out whatever sort of peripheral rays of Saturn we might be encountering. So not something to worry about yet. Just make sure that the ascendant degree is far enough away to not be hit by the opposition with Saturn, which for me is 5 degrees. So this is like a separation of like 8 degrees. I think it's fine. Oops, I didn't mean to hit that button, but it did. But be mindful of that in your location if the ascendant is a little bit off, is a little bit different, and try to back it up or move it forward. Well, not move it forward, but back it up to get some room between the Saturn opposition. But other than that, you got yourself a good 7th Lunar Mansion Talisman. Our 4th election opportunity is going to be for the 8th Lunar Mansion. And the 8th Lunar Mansion is one that is associated with victory. Victory, overcoming opponents, success, things like that. So, of course, probably historically we were talking more military victories, or, being victorious over somebody in court. And while we can probably still do that last one for many of us, I don't imagine most of us are marching armies across Europe yet. So until that day comes, until the average YouTuber is able to command vast legions of individuals, maybe you just use it for real-time strategy games. I don't know. I could use that. But for the text traditionally was probably more focused on military campaigns and success in that venture. Obviously, there are other ways you can compete with people, that you can be kind of like put in competition with others, whether that is like through more serious things like through litigation, or through like competition for like promotions at work, or like positions, trying to apply for jobs. You're competing with other people, whether you know who they are or not. Or if it's just something that you're doing that's a little bit less seriously, like sports competitions, baking competitions, like cooking competitions, things like that. Let me backtrack. Not less serious, but less life and death, we'll say. Then the 8th Lunar Mansion can be very helpful. And this is a mansion that I've wanted for a long time, a talisman that I've wanted for a long time, and just have never been able to find a really great time that I thought kind of fit a lot of the things that I was looking for. I think in the past we've seen some 8th Lunar Mansion talismans that were okay, but I actually kind of like this one, so I'll probably go ahead and make this one myself. And so the 8th Lunar Mansion for North America, this is for North America and for Australia. So Western Europe, North Africa will not have an opportunity for this one, but Australia and North America will. For the North American chart, this takes place on May 1st at around 9:30 in the morning. And here we've got the moon on the ascendant, and she's applying the sextile to the sun. Of course, the sun is going to be probably the best choice when it comes to a moon contact for this. The sun is all about like honors, victory, coming out on top. It's the king of the planets. So it has a lot of that sort of power kind of naturally baked into it. So a really great planet to go to for victory, for those kinds of manifestations, those kinds of things. So good to have. Of course, I'm a sucker for sun-moon contacts anyway. The downside for this is, of course, that the aspect is kind of far. It's like 8 degrees apart, not 7 degrees apart, which is a little bit far. We'd have liked that to be tighter, but we're going to do, what can you do? Push the moon a little bit out of the way? Can't do it. I've tried. What, Bubbles? What do you want to do? Yeah? Do you want to make this talisman? Oh, I think she said no. She's not answering. Oh, what? What? Yeah. So we've got the moon connecting to the sun. At the same time, the moon rules the first house. So this is all we really have to worry about. And the moon and the ascendant, which are at the same degree of the zodiac, are not afflicted by Saturn. Averse to Mars. So a really good... Oh, bye, Bubbles. A really good 8th Lunar Mansion talisman that I'm excited to tackle myself. So I know that in the card for the 8th Lunar Mansion it says that the fumigation is sulfur. Obviously, I don't recommend burning sulfur. It's not cute. It doesn't smell good. Poisonous gas. Not great. What I've done in the past is I've used match heads. Match heads contain potassium sulfate. Sulfate? Whoops. Potassium something. So that's what I've kind of used as the fumigation, as the incense. It's just kind of like the first strike of the match head. because that is a small enough. I feel like that's a good balance here. The spirit is just going to have to recognize that sulfur is not good for me and have to deal with it. So that's kind of my compromise for that, and something I pass on to you. Just like strike a match head as your source of fumigation for that. The Australian version is going to be very similar. It takes place on May 2nd at around 11:30 in the morning. And here we're going to have the moon in the 8th lunar mansion on the ascendant, and she's going to apply the sextile to the sun here much more closely. In the like it was like 7 degrees apart in the North American version, but here it's like a degree apart, like maybe a degree and a half. So much closer connection, much stronger connection between the sun here, just kind of based on that. So I think that this is probably the better between the two, just because of that close sun connection. At the same time, the moon is the ruler of the ascendant. So that's all we really have to worry about with here. Oh, that's right. So the one thing that I did not like about this election here, but I wanted to include it anyway, is Mars's presence in the first house. I think it might be fine because of the, partly because of the trine to Venus, but also because of the nature of the talisman as being something that's more competitive. And so I think it's probably going to be fine that Mars is here, because being competitive is something that like Mars really likes, and having that sort of like competitive spirit in the first house I think is probably okay. So normally I don't like malefics in the first house, but I do make exception for them if they are thematically appropriate. And I would say Mars in the first house is thematically appropriate for like a competing type talisman. So, but just something to be aware of. I did want to mention that. I keep hitting the wrong button. But because the moon is the ruler of the first house here, she's the only planet we really have to worry about being hurt. She's past the square of Saturn, not like yesterday's news. And she's not conjoined or afflicted by Mars. So all in all, a really great 8th lunar mansion election. Our next electional opportunity is going to be for a North American exclusive, and this is going to be for the 9th lunar mansion. Now, the 9th lunar mansion is a little bit of a complicated one. It is one that is primarily more destructive in its focus, so that's what we would use it more for, especially during the waning moon. But during the waxing moon, it carries themes of magical protection, boundaries, and warding, and so that's really where we're leaning into with this as a waxing moon, as a waxing 9th lunar mansion talisman, which changes a lot of the meanings and the power and the intent behind the magical applications of the mansion, just because of how tied into the moon, of course, the lunar mansions are. Like, well, what a shock. So for our 9th lunar mansion election here, it's going to be this is again for North America, it's going to be for May 2nd at 10:33 in the morning, so just a little bit after 10:30. And we're going to have, again, the moon on the ascendant here in the 9th mansion. And at this time, she's going to be applying a trine aspect to Saturn. And a lot of times, how do I phrase this? A lot of times when it comes to magical warding and safeguarding, I prefer the sun. The sun is a very powerful planet when it comes to banishing darkness. Obviously, that's what the sun does. It's a beacon of light. But also when it comes to sort of commanding the magical powers, well, not just the magical powers, commanding the powers of manifestations, significations, anything of the other planets. So the sun kind of has this big boss energy that when we apply for like magical protection is very easy. It's very sensible. Saturn is a little bit different. Saturn is more like the wall, the boundary, that which kind of pushes back and keeps things out. So Saturn, I think, is one that you have to be a little bit careful with when it comes to utilizing for magical boundaries, because a lot of times what ends up happening, or what I've seen happen with talismans that focus a lot on, like, Saturn, this is more in the lines of like Saturn talismans, like talismans for the planet Saturn. The way that they keep you safe is they make other people afraid of you. And that can definitely be useful for a lot of different situations, but I do think that it is an important distinction to make and make clear that seems to be how more Saturn planetary talismans operate when it comes to establishing safety and boundaries. It's a totally valid approach, but not one that probably everybody is going to want. I don't think that you necessarily have that same issue here within a Lunar Mansion talisman, because the force from the talisman is really the Lunar Mansion spirit. The planet that the moon applies to just kind of helps sets the theme for it all, but is not directly involved in the getting it done kind of a situation. It just kind of sets the theme and helps sync up the lunar sort of appropriateness of it all. So just kind of that aside about the Lunar Mansion talismans. And so actually thinking about it now, this time here is set for 10:33. But if you wanted to, you could definitely back it up more. If you back the chart up to around 10:07, well, this isn't going to be exact for everybody's location, so don't mind the time. The point is the degree of the zodiac. So if we get 12 degrees and 30 minutes of Cancer on the ascendant, then we'll also be able to lean into the exact sextile between the sun and the ascendant degree, which brings in that sort of solar banishing quality to the talisman as well, to accompany and to work alongside Saturn's kind of keep everything out focus. So I think this would be my recommendation, actually, the earlier time with the 12 degrees of Cancer on the ascendant, if you can, to bring in that solar connection and to have that Saturn connection. So you kind of have this dual approach of like light and darkness kind of a thing to help keep yourself safe from, malevolent attachments and spiritual entities and things like that, which is more the ninth mansion's focus. Our sixth electional opportunity that we're going to have this month, we're halfway through it, is going to be for an 11th Lunar Mansion talisman. So the 11th Lunar Mansion is one that I think works very well for discussing about promotions, about job, like career advancement, renegotiating job benefits, that kind of a thing. The texts describe the 11th Lunar Mansion as, on the one hand, being able to get honors from authority, and the other hand, being able to improve or acquire wealth. So where do those things come together? Employment, generally. I guess you could also make an argument that they come together for getting settlements from, getting monetary settlements from mediators or judges or something like that. But that's a much more, we'll say, unique. So that area is really where the 11th Lunar Mansion shines, and I've seen a lot of clients use it for getting the dream job that they wanted, or getting a job that they didn't realize was their dream job until they got it. So the 11th Lunar Mansion is one that I highly recommend, and thankfully this 11th Lunar Mansion opportunity is going to be available across the world. So North America, Western Europe, Australia, North Africa, everybody should be able to have a good opportunity to make an 11th Lunar Mansion talisman if they want. For North America, this election takes place on May 4th at just after 12:30. And here we're going to have the moon in the 11th mansion on the ascendant. She's going to, she's moved past this conjunction with Mars. And at this point, she is applying the trine to Mercury. And so I think I talked about this last time. I think there was a previous month, either last month or the month before, where we had a similar situation with the moon applying to Mercury in the 11th Lunar Mansion. Well, I wouldn't necessarily think of Mercury as career advancement or promotion or, getting a raise or things like that. I would absolutely associate Mercury with renegotiation. So if you're in a situation where you're having to renegotiate salary or renegotiate benefits or anything like that, Mercury can be very helpful for you. There's also the idea of, planets are going to, while the planet that the moon applies to is not the one responsible for the talisman's effectiveness, that's really more about the Lunar Mansion and the moon. The planet can help flavor the outcome and flavor the things that the talisman can be more useful for. So while we would typically think about Jupiter or even Venus and the sun for career advancement and things like that, Mercury can be a useful planet here, especially if the career that we're in or interested in breaking into is more Mercury oriented, like accounting, law, teaching, management, things like that. So when you're looking for your own elections, keep that in mind as well. Because sometimes I'll see a planet connecting that I don't think is such a great candidate for the Lunar Mansion, but you might have a specific situation, a specific circumstance where that planet actually does very well, or is very fittingly appropriate for what it is that you do or are after. So keep that in mind when you're making your own elections too. So the moon applies this trine to Mercury. Typically, we wouldn't think of Mercury as being very helpful for career advancement, but can be very helpful for negotiating or moving up in careers that are Mercury-oriented. So good to know, good to remember. Meanwhile, the moon is separated from this conjunction with Mars. She's 9 degrees out, so we've left that behind. And the moon is averse to Saturn. And yeah, everything, the ascendant is far enough away from Mars. Remember, I keep a 5 degree distance. Feel free to, go further into the sign of Leo if you want to get more space from Mars. If you have more of like a 10 degree or whatever, or between planets in the ascendant, do that, move it around. But this is going to be your sort of core format for the 11th Lunar Mansion Talisman for North America. Western Europe and North Africa is going to see theirs look slightly differently, this time with the moon on the midheaven. This time is May 4th at 2011, so a little bit after 8 o'clock, around 8:15. So the moon's in the 11th mansion on the midheaven, and, of course, very fitting for career type talismans. I don't usually look into it that much, especially with the moon, who can only be in about like 4 houses to be a useful Lunar Mansion talisman. But here we've got the moon still applying that trine to Mercury. Again, Mercury would probably not be our first choice when we're talking about when we're talking about career advancement, unless we're leaning more into the negotiating side of Mercury, or the career that we're in is more Mercury oriented. Mars is going to rule the first house here with the Scorpio on the ascendant, which makes a lot of the more malevolence that we would worry about from Mars kind of dissipate. So we're not worried, in fact, that Mars is square the ascendant, because Mars rules the ascendant. And Mars is unafflicted by Saturn, the ascendant is unafflicted by Saturn, and the sun has not combusted Mars or anything like that. So again, another good election to lean into for career stuff with the 11th Lunar Mansion. And then the Australian version is going to look different as well, because here we're focused on the moon in the 3rd house. I think this is our first 3rd house mansion, our first 3rd house moon talisman this go around, because they've just been very good aside from that. And here we're going to have the moon in the 3rd house in the 11th mansion, and she's still applying that trine to Mercury here. Mercury's also going to rule the ascendant, and Mercury's unafflicted by Saturn or Mars. The ascendant 0 degrees Gemini is also unafflicted by Saturn or Mars. So again, safety with the ascendant, safety from the moon, who's 11 degrees separated from the conjunction with Saturn. From the conjunction of Mars, and safety from the ruler of the 1st house. We did not put the moon here on the ascendant. Why didn't we do that? Oh, we didn't put the moon here on the ascendant because I was still a little bit uncomfortable with the sun ruling the 1st house and in like this 7 degree-ish square aspect with Mars. So that's why we didn't put the moon on the ascendant for this one. So just for your kind of information on that one, I just be mindful of the ruler of the 1st house, what they're up to. Our 7th electional opportunity for this month is going to be for a Regulus fixed star talisman for North America, Western Europe, and North Africa. Australia, unfortunately, is going to miss it, as the moon will not be applying to Regulus by the time she makes it to an angle. But Regulus is one of the more popular fixed stars. It's associated, of course, with the primary star in the constellation of Leo. And it has associations and connections with fame, with moving up in the world, connections with health, with assistance from dealing with mental and physical health issues, for acquiring courage. It has kind of diverse enough powers to be generally applicable to kind of everybody, either for helping with very common issues that people face, or just kind of giving a little bit more of an edge to situations that people find difficult, to where it's become pretty quickly one of the more popular fixed star talismans. So definitely, look into Regulus talismans if it's something that you're all interested in. In some ways, there's a little bit of overlap with like the 11th Lunar Mansion, where Regulus is very career focused as well. Maybe not career focused. I don't know if that's a great word for it. Many people do become famous through career, obviously. But I would argue that Regulus is really more about being well known, about having a good reputation in many cases, not always. And then there's also health benefits that come with it, where Regulus is said to help counter the melancholic humor, so helps counter things like depression, insomnia, anxiety, helps with joint issues, mobility issues, inflammation sometimes, and what's the word? Autoimmune disorders, that's the word, and various autoimmune disorders. So Regulus, really good, really helpful fixed star talisman to have. For the North American version, this election is going to take place on May 5th at 1346, and so about 1:45 p.m. And here we're going to have the moon, we're going to have this star Regulus ascending. Regulus is the projected ecliptical degree of Regulus right now is 0 degrees Virgo, but Regulus is very near to the ecliptic, so it's not much of a projection. The moon is here on this degree, applying to the star, and at the same time she's applying this trine to the sun. So normally with the fixed stars, we want them to apply to planets that are like the fixed star. So Regulus is a star that's of the nature of Jupiter and Mars, so we would want Jupiter and Mars contacts. But but Regulus has such strong solar symbolism and kind of solar affinity, I guess we'll say, that I have gotten a lot of good outcomes with Regulus fixed star talismans that have been connected with the sun. So for Regulus and for Sirius as well, who also has kind of strong solar implications, I go to the sun, or I consider the sun an adequate candidate for the moon to apply to it. So keep that in mind if you're making your own or kind of want to experiment with that. The sun works really well with Regulus. So we've got that. Meanwhile, the ruler of the first house is Mercury, because Virgo rules it, because Mercury rules Virgo. Over here, chilling out on the cusp of the ninth house in Aries, and we are far enough away from this Mars square in about 14-ish degrees, 8 plus 7, something like that. That's like 17 degrees or something. So we're far enough away from that not have to worry about it. Mercury's not afflicted by Saturn. The ascendant degree is not afflicted by Mars or Saturn, so we kind of have all the pieces there that we need for a Regulus fixed star talisman for North America. Western Europe's Regulus fixed star talisman is going to take place on May 5th at 21:07, so just after 9 o'clock at night. And here, very similar thing, we've got Regulus at 0 degrees of Virgo on the midheaven, the moon applying to this degree as well, and still applying that trine to the sun. Oh, I guess one thing that I could have said too about the previous selection and this one is that obviously the sun moon trine is very far apart, about 15 degrees. That is not ideal, obviously. We would want we would want a connection that was more imminent than that was going to happen more quickly. We just don't have it in this instance, but we do have this applying trine to work with. It would have been great if it were closer, but it just isn't. For both of these too, I guess you could argue that the moon is venerated. She's separating from the sextile of Jupiter and applying to the trine of the sun. So a very strong, well taken care of, venerated moon in both elections as well. For this one, for the Western European and North African version, since the moon is on the midheaven, we've got Scorpio on the ascendant, which points us to Mars over here as the ruler of the first house. Mars is our ruler of the first house. We don't have to worry about any sort of like square considerations between Mars and the ascendant, because Mars rules the ascendant. And there is no affliction by Saturn to the moon, or to Mars, or to the ascendant, which makes everything useful, makes everything good to go. So again, Western Europe, North Africa, North America, make you some Regulus fixed star talismans and share with our Australian friends, because I'm sure it won't be too long where we'll be crying that they have all the elections again. So our next election opportunity is going to be for the 13th Lunar Mansion. And the 13th Lunar Mansion is another relationship-oriented talisman, kind of like the 6th Lunar Mansion was. But where the 6th Lunar Mansion was more focused on kind of like romantic relationships and kind of their well-being, the 13th Mansion is more focused on sexual relationships and their well-being. Obviously, there's some overlap here, but not always. And so it's important to kind of remember that they have a bit of a distinction. Not that you couldn't go to the 13th Lunar Mansion for kind of like, general like dating and romance kind of talismans, things like that, or for strengthening pre-existing relationships. But there is this sort of emphasis on sexuality that the 13th Lunar Mansion has that the 6th doesn't have. So you can also take that and you can apply it towards sexual wellness. Whether that is through like performance anxiety, erectile dysfunction, or like painful periods, anything like that. The 13th Lunar Mansion can also provide some assistance and relief with. So be mindful of kind of both applications and how they can be useful. And stay safe out there. But this is an election that everybody can use. Both Australia, Western Europe, North Africa, and North America. Everybody has an opportunity for this one. So for the North American version of the 13th Lunar Mansion, it takes place on May 6th at 10:08, so just a little bit after 10 a.m. And here we're going to have the moon in the third house in the 13th mansion, and she is continuing to apply that trine with the sun. So we see that connection with the sun is intensifying, now about 6 degrees out, which is much more of a comfortable place that we would want it to be. And of course, whenever it comes to relationships, in general, for almost anything, I don't know, you guys know by now that for almost anything, if there's a sun moon connection to be had, I want it. Like, I'm not going to argue about it. I'm going to take it. So sun moon connections are always really strong, really positive, and I often think that the waxing trine, the waxing trine aspect of the moon, is like the most powerful positive aspect the moon can make. So I'm always very interested in seeing what mansion the moon falls into when she's in this position with the sun, and if we can make a talisman out of it. At the same time, the moon is the ruler of the first house down here, and she's far enough away from the opposition of Saturn to not worry about it, and averse to Mars over here in Cancer. So we're getting close to this opposition. It's about 18 degrees away. So we're probably not going to push that one too much anymore until we're on the other side of Saturn. But I also selected the 16-degree Cancer ascendant, kind of intentionally / luckily. I knew I needed to keep the moon down here in the third house to do this. But by keeping the moon down here in the third house and putting 16 degrees of Cancer on the ascendant, I get the sextile to the sun, and I get this cute little triangle between all of them. Benefic aspect connections with the benefic aspect connections with the ascendant are a really great way to stabilize them and make the talismans more positive and bring in sort of an extra dose of that planetary energy. That's why we avoid squares and oppositions with malefics, because they'll bring that into it. But positive aspects with benefic planets, and even positive aspects with the malefic planets, if they are thematically appropriate, can be great sort of extra boosters on top of talismanic collections. The Western European and North African version is May 6th at 1432. Similar setup, except for now the moon is in the first house. So we've got the moon in the ascendant here, and she is still applying that trine to the sun, a very great planet for the moon to apply to in relationship-type talismans. The ruler of the first house is Mercury, because Virgo is on the ascendant. Mercury's chilling out over here in the 9th house. Far enough away from the square of Mars, which will encounter it like 8 or 9 degrees of Taurus, for us to not have to worry about it at this point. And there's no affliction between the moon, the ascendant degree, Mercury, and Mars or Saturn or the sun. We're getting closer to that though. So another just really good example. There was not a way here for us to get a benefic aspect to connect with the ascendant without pushing the moon into the 12th house, and we're not going to do that. And then the Australian version looks very similar to the Western European and Northern African version. Here we're going to have the moon very freshly into the 13th Lunar Mansion, and she's going to still be applying that trine to the sun. The North American version, I think, gets the better end of this deal because they're able to connect with the sun much more closely, much more immediately, whereas some of the others, like the other two locations, had the moon kind of far away still. So we've got that connection here. Again, Mercury as the ruler of the first house, hanging out here now in the 8th house because of geography, I guess is what we'll say, because of geography. But still unafflicted by Mars or Saturn, not combust the sun. The ascendant degree is also safe. The moon is also safe, so we're still able to kind of keep that connection, that safety net around the moon here, which I think is important. You know, safety is something that I always try to emphasize in these elections. Kind of the whole point is to help people feel more secure and more safe in trying out talismanic magic, especially if they don't feel like they have the electional chops to be able to find an election for themselves. So I always consider safety to be important, but especially when it comes to like health type talismans, safety is very important. So I always try to make sure that we emphasize that in these kinds of situations to help you feel more secure and just kind of remove that specific doubt from your mind when making this or kind of going through with this, because I want everybody to experiment. Moving right along, our next electional opportunity is for the 16th Lunar Mansion, and this is one that's a little bit more focused on finances and transactions. So the 16th Lunar Mansion in waxing moons, and I guess the better way to phrase it is that the 16th Lunar Mansion is a little bit more about sort of like the flow of money. Waxing moon 16th lunar mansions are about money coming to you. Waning moon 16th lunar mansions are more about money moving away from you. Of course, waning moon, that would mean the waning moon one is probably less ideal, but it can be used in specific circumstances. But the 16th lunar mansion and the waxing moon, which is what we have here, like I said, more focused on money coming towards you and a little bit more focused on like transactional So especially if you work in like sales, or you work in retail, or anything that has to do with like that transactionalness of, I guess a better way to phrase this would be that the 16th Lunar Mansion is better for those of us who are involved in fields that's more about the sale of goods rather than the sale of services. It can be used for services, but it's very clear that the imagery is a bit more on like buying and selling goods rather than, like I said, services or time. So just something to keep in mind with it if you're kind of planning on it. But this is an opportunity, this election here, or this mansion, the 16th Lunar Mansion, is an opportunity that everybody in the world will be able to have. And for our North American version, that takes place on May 9th at 12:38 p.m. So here we have the moon in the 16th mansion down here in the third house. And at this time, she is applying this trine to Jupiter here in Gemini. Of course, Jupiter is going to be about finance, is going to be about wealth coming in. This would also have been another good mansion for Mercury to be connected with, because Mercury is about commerce. So there's that kind of connection with him. We're going to look to we're going to look to the Sun as the ruler of our first house, with Leo on the ascendant, the Sun up here in the 10th. And far enough away from the square of Mars, we're 10 degrees separated, left that back in the dust, not in a bad aspect with Saturn. And what I wanted to do here was I wanted to keep this square aspect between the ascendant and the Sun's degree, just to kind of bring that solar connection home more palpably, more strongly. So that's what we were able to do here. The moon is not afflicted by Saturn or Mars. The sun can't combust himself. The sun's not afflicted by those planets either. So just a good, safe talismanic election for this mansion for North America. Western Europe is going to look almost the exact same, like literally the exact same. It takes place on May 9th at 12:56 p.m. And I wanted to keep that same theme here going. The moon in the third house in the 16th mansion, she's applying this trine to Jupiter, who is all about, wealth, making more money, having more opportunities to do that. The ruler of the first house is still going to be the Sun up here in the 10th, past the square of Mars, not afflicted by Saturn. Hello, Lee. Please don't knock my camera over, Lee. He says, how do I get up here? Lee, what are you doing? And we're even able to keep the same ascendant degree to keep the square with the Sun exact, which is how I would prefer it. And so that is Western Europe, North Africa's version. And then Australia's version is the one that's going to look a little bit different. And here we're going to have the moon in the 10th house now in the 16th mansion. And at this time, she is still applying that trine with Jupiter down here in the 6th right now. Again, connection with Jupiter, about that wealth, about that money that Jupiter is able to, create and provide for people. The ruler of the first house here is going to be Saturn down here in Pisces. Saturn is not in a square aspect with Mars. I don't worry about the nodes with planetary connections. There are really more issues between the Sun and the Moon. And the Saturn's not combust, not square Mars. And at the same time, I wanted to try to bring this Sun connection in with this chart too. And so we kept it to 19 degrees Capricorn to get a nice trine with the Sun at 19 degrees of Taurus. So again, benefic aspects with the ascendant are great ways to bolster and boost a talismanic election. So keep a lookout for these. Even if we have to kind of make the moon less even if we have to make the moon less angular to do it, it's a good trade-off. So always try to see if you can get a good benefic on connection to the ascendant. Our next election opportunity is going to be for Western Europe, North Africa, and Australia. North America is going to have to sit this one out, and it is going to be for an opportunity for the 20th Lunar Mansion. So the 20th Lunar Mansion is one that I really like, and it's really sad we don't get more opportunities for it. But it's more about long-term planning, in my opinion. The texts talk about it being more about hunting, but I think of it as more kind of goal-oriented type talisman. It's more about, chasing and obtaining a goal, in kind of the same way that hunting is more about, identifying a prey, identifying a target, and going out and catching it. I think this is very clearly a really great metaphor for goals. And so we've crossed over into the waning moon phase with this mansion. So we have to be a little bit more mindful about how we phrase or work with this mansion now that we're in a waning moon phase, because waning moon phases are about diminishment, are about giving up, or about letting go. So that means that it's better that your goals for the 20th lunar mansion are about letting go, are about getting rid of something, are about diminishing something. So keep that in mind as I go over the elections for this locations, because these elections are also a little bit different and will probably inform will inform what area of life these are best applied to. So our first election for this is the Western Europe and North African chart, and it takes place on May 14th at 1:51 a.m., so a little bit before 2 in the morning. And here we're going to have the moon in the 20th mansion in the 10th house, and she's going to be applying the trine to Venus down here. At the same time, we're going to have Saturn as the ruler of the first, and Saturn is unafflicted by Mars. Saturn does not combust the sun, but we're going to keep this nice tight trine with the sun's degree at 23 degrees Taurus. So again, we're moving back to this idea of bolstering the ascendant with a benefic contact. We're gonna do it. And so with this 20th lunar mansion election moving towards a trine with Venus, this would more be, in my opinion, a talisman that is helpful for helping people to let go and move on from Venus type issues. That can be things like addictions towards foods. That can be towards, like breaking more Venus type habits. That can be more about letting go of old relationships that aren't helpful. It can be about letting go of baggage from previous relationships to help you move on in a more positive direction for future relationships. So that would be more of the angle that I would approach this 20th lunar mansion talisman at. That doesn't mean you couldn't use it for something else, but because of the Venus flavor that this election has with the moon's application, this talisman will be more helpful. It will be more specialized in helping us to move beyond Venus issues. The Australian version of the 20th lunar mansion chart takes place on May 14th at 15:07, so just a little bit after 3 p.m. And here our election is going to be focused on the moon on the third house cusp in the 20th mansion, applying the trine to Mars. Venus is going to rule the first house here from Aries. Venus is 10 degrees separated from this conjunction with Saturn. I think that's fine distance for Venus to kind of like be out of orb and to shake off Saturn's influence. Feel free to disagree. So Venus is far enough from Saturn not to worry about that, not in a bad aspect with Mars, not combust the sun. The ascendant degree is also safe from Saturn. We're about 7-8 degrees away from it. Feel free to move this further into Libra if you want a little bit more space between the Saturn opposition, but be careful though, because you don't want to lose the moon on the third house cusp. If she goes too far from that, she's in the second house, which isn't nearly as good. We don't have a benefic aspect to connect to the ascendant with here, but here we have the moon applying a trine to Mars, which to me suggests that this talisman, this 20th lunar mansion talisman, is better about moving beyond Mars type hangups. So helping let go of anger, helping let go of rage, helping let go of grudges, helping to let go of past conflicts, things like that. That is really more in line of what this talismanic property would be, because of that Mars flavor. Again, like I said in the previous one, just because the talisman is specialized a little bit in getting rid of Mars type issues, it doesn't mean it can't help you with things more generally. But if you are somebody who has a particular Mars type problem that they want help, moving beyond or letting go of, this is it. Our 11th electional opportunity for this month is going to be for the 22nd Lunar Mansion. The 22nd Lunar Mansion is one that is primarily associated with freedom and liberation, and like safety and travel and things like that as well. But the main focus, in my opinion, is that freedom and liberation. There are a lot of things that we find ourselves trapped in, and finding ways to get out of them is often a challenge and a trick that many of us really have yet to learn. The idea that we often find ourselves stuck in situations because we're comfortable with them, and we are uncomfortable with the idea of change and growth. Of course, there are people who are stuck in more dangerous situations, or potentially more self-destructive ones. And so the 22nd Lunar Mansion is very helpful at helping people find ways out and helping them to maneuver through these more complicated issues. So this is something that is available for Western Europe, North Africa, and Australia. Again, North America, take a nap. And for our Western European version, North African version, it's going to be May 16th at around 4:30 in the morning. Here we're going to have the moon in the 10th house in the 22nd mansion, and she's going to be applying this trine to Mercury. And this is kind of a weird one, I guess, because Mercury is definitely more difficult to pin down. So it's really helpful for like escape, for moving beyond things. Generally, with this talisman, with this mansion, I like to have the moon apply to a more benefic planet because I think that that sort of like safety and that sort of like moving towards a better place is more important. But the imagery for the 22nd lunar mansion is very obviously mercurial. So it is difficult for me to look at this nice trine aspect happening here and say, I don't think this fits. So I normally go to more benefic planets, but I think the Mercury connection here is something worth exploring, especially if we can get another benefic to kind of help cement it or make it easier. And we were able to do that in this one. So we've got Aries on the ascendant, which points us to Mars down here as the ruler of the first house. Mars is in a nice trine with Venus right now, and Venus is in the first house. We can get Venus on the ascendant, which helps us to kind of have that benefic presence to help make this process a little bit easier than it would be otherwise. So we're not leaving this completely in the hands of Mercury in this instance. We have some kind of Venus backup to help make sure that where we're going is a better place than where we are now for Western Europe and North Africa. The Australian version is going to take place on May 16th at 16:20, so a little bit before 4:30. And here we're going to have the moon in the third house in the 22nd mansion, still applying that trine to Mercury here on the 7th in this chart. Mars is going to be the ruler of the first house again because of Scorpio on the ascendant, but we're actually going to point us up here towards Mars in Leo in the 10th. We still have that trine with Venus for Mars, which is a nice little thing. I would have preferred to have some kind of good connection with the ascendant degree, but we miss out on that in this particular election, just not really having the opportunity to line it up appropriately. But again, Mercury here in the 7th is a difficult planet to pin down, and so it can be really great energy to use when moving into a new place, to kind of give you that flexibility, to give you that kind of openness to change that might help you get out of whatever situation you're in, or find the sort of motivation within you to move towards getting out, because it's kind of a two-sided thing, right? Whew. Our final election opportunity, our 12th and final election opportunity for this month is going to be for the 23rd Lunar Mansion. Now, the 23rd Lunar Mansion is a good mansion for a waning moon phase. It's one of my favorite ones for the waning moon. Because while we typically think of the waning moon as very difficult, as like more advantaged towards cursing and more malefic type magics, it's really about diminishing things, about letting go of things. And we can apply that diminishing to more positive results. And I think that's where the 23rd Lunar Mansion really shines. It's the idea that it's about sacrifice. It's about letting go of something. And we can use this time to sacrifice things to it that we don't need, that we don't want, to help us move on to other things. So there is this sort of like sacrificial quality of habits, of things, of ideas, of people, of energy, of relationships, that the 23rd Lunar Mansion is very useful for, kind of giving it things to deal with so that we don't have to deal with it anymore. There's also a health aspect with the 23rd Lunar Mansion where the idea is that we're sort of sacrificing to it, the illness or the pain or whatever it is that is causing us to be unwell, because this Lunar Mansion is focused on, because the Lunar Mansion has imagery involved with swallowing, and devouring things. It is more in tune with helping to cure illnesses or pains that are involved in, of course, the parts of the body that are about eating. So the mouth, the teeth, the tongue, the throat, the esophagus, the stomach, all that whole mess are going to be areas where the 23rd Lunar Mansion is going to be especially potent because it is symbolically appropriate. Doesn't mean it can't help you with other things, but this is sort of like the thing that it was crafted to do, in a sense. So, taking a look at our election, this is an election that everybody's going to be able to have. Our final election is going to be available in North America, Western Europe, North Africa, and Australia, participating locations. And the North American version is going to be on May 16th at 1842. And here we're going to have the moon in the third house in this 23rd mansion. And she's going to be applying the trine to the sun, right? Yeah, she's going to be applying this trine to the sun. Who would have thought? Who would have thought that the last election we would have would be the closing trine to the sun? Who would have thought? Couldn't have been me. Not in Ryan's video. Couldn't have been me. So before I'd mentioned that I think the waxing trine is like the more powerful waxing aspect. I actually think it's the waning sextile that's the more powerful on the waning side, not the waning trine, which you probably would not have guessed. So we've got the trine to the sun, which I think is very helpful, especially when it comes towards healing. So I would say this would be one that's a little bit more towards like the healing into the spectrum, just because the sun's power is like the font of vital force. It's hard to kind of walk away from. So at the same time, we've got this moon sun trine. Mars is going to rule the first house here because the first house is going to be in Scorpio. And Mars up here at the top of the chart in Leo, unafflicted by Saturn, not combust the sun. The ascendant degree similarly is not afflicted by Saturn or the sun. Don't worry about the Mars square here. There is a Mars square, but Mars rules the first house, so it doesn't really damage the first house through its square. That's an acceptable aspect for the ruler of the first house to have, so don't worry too much about it. Within this context, if Mars had not ruled this sign, then we would have been in trouble, but it's not an issue because of Mars' kind of responsibility to this place. But all in all, a good election to look for, a good election to have. I would have preferred it if we could have gotten some sort of benefic contact to this degree to make it a little bit more powerful, make a little bit more something out of it. But, we get what we get. The Western Europe North African version is going to take place on May 17th at 1:11 in the morning. And here we're going to have the moon in the first mansion on the ascendant here. And she's going to still apply that trine to the sun here. So again, we have that strong solar presence, which probably makes the talisman more effective for healing than some of the other issues that the 23rd Lunar Mansion can focus on. The planet that rules the ascendant here is going to be Saturn. Again, I don't worry about node connections with the planets. It's really more of a sun-moon issue. And Saturn is unafflicted by Mars, not combust the sun. The ascendant degree is free from the affliction of Mars, or this, I guess that would be it, as is the moon. So another instance where it would have been very nice to have some sort of benefic connection here. I suppose you could back this time up to get a more solid a more solid square from Venus to the ascendant. But I would have preferred that to be more of a more harmonious aspect, like the sextile or the trine. But you can absolutely add in a Venus square to give you a little something extra to help this talisman kind of be a little bit more effective. Because the unfortunate side is the sun-moon trine is 12 degrees apart, which is a little wide. So we would want this to be a benefic connection would really solidify this. But the square with Venus is kind of the best that we can do for this time for Western Europe and North Africa. The Australian version of this chart is a little bit more like the North American version. Here we have the moon in it's at May 17th at 17:20 in the afternoon. And so here we've got the moon in the third house in the 23rd mansion. We're still playing up this moon trine. The sun here is the closest that we get to it, 18 and 26, so 8 degrees apart, which is getting better. So focusing more on that healing powers of this mansion. The ruler of the first house is going to be Mars because Scorpio is on the ascendant. Mars is pretty amplified up here in the 10th house, unafflicted by Saturn, not combust the sun. The ascendant degree similarly is safe from the afflictions of Saturn or Mars. Well, not Mars. We don't care about Mars because he rules the house. Unafflicted by Saturn. We got a nice trine aspect with Saturn, which is something, I guess. But not really a lot to write home about with that one. Trines of Saturn are just fine. Like, they're not an affliction. That's the best we can say about them. But, yeah, all in all, another appropriate set of configurations for a 23rd Lunar Mansion talisman. Not something I would say would be amazing. This is not the best 23rd Lunar Mansion election I've ever seen. That has actually already been done. But it can probably help you get through whatever issue it is that you're currently struggling with. Whew. But all right, everybody, those were our electional opportunities for this month. A lot going on. You see how much more we're able to do when we're not worried about like retrograde planets or anything like that. So this month really opened up a lot of opportunities for a lot of people around the globe. Really recommend digging into this month and seeing what we can make before something terrible happens. Who knows what terrible sky configuration is going to happen that makes half the planets unusable, and then we're back to 3 elections a month. That's not as fun as this. So be prepared. These months don't come around that often where we have a lot of algolational opportunities. So make sure to make what you can or what seems available or applicable to your situation while you have the opportunity, so that you're not struggling in the future. Because that's something that I think is one of the better aspects, or maybe not the better aspects, but what elevates astrological magic a little bit, is coming into it with the foresight of astrology, knowing what transits or what difficult activations you're going to have coming up in like the next year, and then looking in the present to find what talismans are coming that can help you mitigate or renegotiate some of those difficult contacts. So, for those of you who have birthdays coming up within the next few months, check those solar returns, see what areas of life look difficult, and see if there's a talisman here that can help maybe smooth that out a little bit, would be a recommendation. For something a little bit more actionable that you can do now to prepare for less calm skies in the future. But everybody take care, and we'll be here next time for our Gemini New Moon.